Unfortunately, President Biden is threatening the American people again. And unfortunately, this is happening in many different ways. I'm going to address what some of those ways are in just a moment, but the concern is that he is now telling us that we need to do more. We need to step up. We need to put pressure on our representatives to ensure that they are doing what is best for us. Now, you're going to probably think this is crazy, but in just a moment, I'm going to explain what's going on. And again, it's shocking to me. So I'll break this down in just a moment. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So how is President Biden threatening the American people? Well, let's get into some of the stories from today, and we will address that as we go along. Look at this. President Biden says House Republicans are walking away from the threat of Russia. He says, it's just shocking. I've never seen anything like it. That's what he said on Monday. Now, I want to be very clear on one thing. Why are House Republicans walking away from what President Biden says is the threat of Russia? Well, simple. What President Biden says is if we do not send $60 billion to Ukraine, then we are going to be hit by Russia eventually, because we would then allow Russia to take over more Ukraine. Let's just read what he had to say. He says, the way they're walking away from the threat of Russia, the way they're walking away from NATO, the way they're walking away from meeting our obligations, it's just shocking. I've never seen anything like it. So he says, we are walking away from the threat of Russia. One of the reasons why is because if Russia were to take over all of Ukraine, the concern is then they are now pretty much door to door with a NATO country, a NATO ally. And an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all NATO countries. And that's where President Biden says we would see American troops at war with Russian troops very soon. Now, is this true? Well, it could happen, but the expectation is no, it will not. The United States and Russia do not have any intention of going after each other. We just don't. One of the things President Biden did announce just today, President Biden announced a new 500 sanction list. Okay, 500 sanctions on Russia after Navalny's death just this past week. So this is actually pretty big. Okay, Alexei Navalny, he died in prison, I believe it was last Friday, maybe it was Monday, it was this past week. But that is what some are speculating is going to be the thing that sets off the United States. I don't think it is. I just don't think it is. But at the same time, President Biden is saying, let's send $60 billion to Ukraine. Let's send, another, $15 billion to Israel. Let's send another $9 billion to the Indo-Pacific, to Taiwan, to try to provide additional humanitarian assistance to Gaza, right? So let's send $90 billion or $80 to $90 billion over to other countries. The expectation is about $95 billion is going to go to other countries when we are still not spending the money we need to here in the U.S. So what do? Well, here's a concern that we are spending money in the U.S., but it's not going to the right people. Look at this. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, he says migrants will get about $13 a day on a prepaid credit card. Migrants are going to get $13 a day. It's actually like $12 and some cents. I believe it's $12.52 per day per person. So a family of 4 is going to get $1,000 per month on a credit card to go spend on food and things like that. Well, guess what? At the same time, New York City, they're spending that $53 million on migrants' prepaid debit cards or credit cards, but 1 out of 4 children are still living in poverty. It says nearly 2 million residents were unable to afford basic necessities like housing and food in 2022, including 420,000 kids. But we continue to spend money or try to spend money on other countries. President Biden is threatening us that if we do not provide additional assistance to Ukraine, we're going to see U.S. troops and Russian troops at battle, at war. Guess what? Right now, American children are at war with one another just to survive, just to have food on the table, have clothing on their back. That's a threat. That's a massive threat. But it gets worse, because about a month ago, Congress voted and passed a government funding bill, or a short-term stopgap bill, which means that we have until March, early March, in order to pass another one to keep the United States government funded. Guess what? We have a problem, because at this time, the federal government is beginning the formal process of preparing for a partial shutdown. They're going to do that again. That's just from this morning. They're preparing for another shutdown because, again, we only have a couple weeks left. We got less than 2 weeks before some government agencies will be forced to shut down because we do not have government funding that will exceed past that. Well, what does this mean moving forward? Here's the problem. As of right now, the Biden administration is threatening the American people, saying that we have to provide more funding to Ukraine. But if we provide more funding to Ukraine, there might not be funding for you here in the United States because we have to send it abroad. But they say the good news is by sending it abroad, we are going to have more security here in the United States. I don't know if that's true. I honestly do not know if that's true. All I can tell you is, as of right now, we are already hearing from the U.S. Forest Service that they are expecting a reduction in their funding. And with this reduction, we could see an increase in wildfires this next year. Again, another threat. Because if you remember what happened in Lahaina just this past year, where we saw a fire wipe out the majority of the city, wipe it out, where they are still struggling to get back to where they once were. But guess what the U.S. government did? They sent a $700 check, a $700 one-time check to people of Lahaina to help them with that crisis. But we are seeing illegal immigrants get $1,000 per month to help spend on food. How is this helping the United States? How is this helping the American people? Taxpayers that are paying into the system. Because the U.S. government and Senator Rand Paul had talked about this just the other day, and he stated that the federal government is the only government, because state and local governments have to operate under a budget. The federal government is the only government that has no budget. We still don't have a budget for this year. They have no budget. They do not spend what they bring in. They spend above that. I believe we spend between $200 to $300 billion extra every single month. Every single month. Just the amount that we're paying in interest alone. Okay? Just to hold this debt. It's doubled. That's the crazy part. Is that we are not getting any better. It's getting worse. And as we prolong this, not only are we going to see our benefits get reduced, we are about to see Social Security become insolvent in the next 10 years. That means fixed income households, people on Social Security that get 100% of their benefit today, you're going to see about a 78% benefit come to you in the next 10 years. That means a 22% reduction just because of what we are facing today. So, if you don't think this is a threat, you don't think this is serious, think again. This is a massive threat, and millions of people are going to be impacted. So, that's where we're at this time. As always, as I know more, I promise I'll come back on and share all the latest news and updates. But that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.